Marcus Green had worked tirelessly for years, juggling 2 jobs and sacrificing weekends just to provide a better future for his family. On a warm Friday morning, he finally walked into a downtown bank with a check he had been waiting for, a $10,000 payout from selling his late father's old truck and a small inheritance. Marcus felt proud, even a little relieved. He filled out the deposit slip neatly and approached the teller, offering a polite smile. The young woman behind the counter glanced at the check, then at Marcus, her expression stiffening. $10,000? She repeated, her voice uncertain. Yes, ma'am, Marcus said calmly. I'd like to deposit it into my account. Instead of processing the transaction, she excused herself and whispered to her manager. Within minutes, 2 security guards approached. Sir, we need you to step aside, one of them ordered. Marcus frowned, confused. Is there a problem? You'll have to come with us, the other guard said firmly. Before Marcus could protest, police officers rushed into the bank. They grabbed his arms, twisted them behind his back, and snapped on handcuffs. Customers gasped. Some even pulled out their phones to record. This man is trying to commit fraud, the manager declared loudly. Marcus's heart pounded. Fraud? That's my money. I can explain, but his words were drowned out as the officers dragged him toward the exit. In that humiliating moment, Marcus looked around, his dignity crushed. All he had wanted was to deposit money he had earned and rightfully owned. Yet instead of being treated like a customer, he was treated like a criminal. What Marcus didn't know was that the truth he carried would shake the entire city. The ride to the police station felt endless. Marcus sat in the back of the squad car, wrists burning from the tight cuffs. The officers in the front whispered to each other, occasionally glancing at him in the mirror, as if he were already guilty. At the precinct, he was shoved into a chair. The officer in charge, a stocky man with sharp eyes, dropped the check on the table. Where did you get this? He demanded. Marcus stared at the paper that had caused his nightmare. It's mine. I sold my father's old truck. The rest is from his estate. Everything is legal, the officer smirked. Funny. You expect us to believe a man like you just walks in with 10 grand? Sounds like a scam. Marcus's stomach tightened. He knew exactly what a man like you meant. His skin color had turned a routine deposit into a crime. I have documents, Marcus insisted. Titles, bills of sale. Call the attorney handling my father's estate. He'll confirm everything. But no one listened. Instead, they fingerprinted him, took his mugshot, and locked him in a holding cell with men who stared at him as though he were prey. Hours passed. Marcus thought of his wife Lena and their son Jamal. They would be terrified not knowing where he was. Finally, a young officer approached the bars. He looked nervous. Mr. Green, the attorney you mentioned just called, says he's on his way. Marcus exhaled slowly. Maybe someone was finally going to listen. But what he didn't know was that his lawyer wasn't coming alone. He was bringing evidence that would expose not just prejudice, but corruption buried deep inside the system. The heavy door to the station creaked open, and a tall man in a grey suit strode in with quiet authority. His name was Daniel Brooks, Marcus's longtime family attorney. He carried a leather briefcase that looked worn from years in the courtroom. I need to see my client, now, Daniel demanded, flashing his credentials at the desk sergeant. The officer hesitated, but Daniel's tone left no room for argument. Minutes later, Marcus was escorted into the small interrogation room, still cuffed. His face lit up with relief when he saw Daniel. Finally, Marcus muttered, "Tell them the truth." Daniel opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. I have here the bill of sale for Mr. Green's vehicle, notarized and signed. I also have probate documents confirming the inheritance. This check is entirely legitimate. The lead officer crossed his arms. We've seen fake documents before. Doesn't mean anything. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then you won't mind if I call the probate court clerk right now, or the bank's corporate office, because if you continue to detain my client without probable cause, you'll be facing a lawsuit so large your department won't recover. The room went silent. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus finally spoke up, voice steady despite his anger. All I did was walk into a bank with money I earned. And you treated me like a thief. Daniel placed a firm hand on Marcus's shoulder. You don't have to explain anymore. The evidence will speak. But just as it seemed the nightmare was ending, another officer rushed into the room, pale-faced. Captain, you need to see this. The check? It's been flagged by federal investigators. Marcus's heart sank. Something much bigger was at play. Marcus's pulse quickened as the officer laid the news on the table. The $10,000 check is connected to an ongoing federal investigation. What investigation? Marcus asked, bewildered. The captain leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. That's what we're trying to figure out. The system flagged it as suspicious. Until we get clearance, you're staying put. Daniel Brooks slammed his palm against the table. That's outrageous. My client deposited a perfectly valid check from a probate account and a private vehicle sale. If there's a federal flag, it's on the bank, not him. The captain sneered. Funny how you lawyers always spin it. $10,000 is classic laundering money, easy to break down, easy to move. Marcus shook his head firmly. I'm not a criminal. That money was my father's legacy. He worked his whole life in a factory, and when he passed, that's all he left me. I sold his truck to add to it. That's it. The captain wasn't convinced, but before he could reply, the door burst open. A suited man with a federal badge stepped inside. Special Agent Rivera, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Everyone stiffened. Rivera opened a slim folder and scanned Marcus. You're Marcus Green? Yes, Marcus said cautiously. Rivera nodded. Mr. Green, you're not the target here, but this check, your bank has been under surveillance. We believe someone inside has been funneling dirty money through legitimate accounts. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. Are you saying my client was set up? Rivera's gaze was sharp. Exactly. And if Marcus hadn't deposited that check today, we wouldn't have caught the scheme. Marcus blinked in disbelief. His humiliation might just expose a crime far larger than himself. The room fell silent after Agent Rivera's words. Marcus leaned forward, still trying to process it all. You mean, I was arrested because someone inside the bank is dirty? Rivera nodded. We've been tracking unusual deposits for months. Your check got mixed into a laundering pattern, but unlike others, yours was clean. That's why the system flagged it. It forced us to look closer. Daniel crossed his arms. So instead of investigating properly, the bank called the police on my client, humiliating him in public. The captain bristled. Hold on. We were acting on suspicion. Suspicion? Daniel cut in sharply. Or bias. My client was dragged out in handcuffs because of the color of his skin. You didn't ask questions. You assumed guilt. Marcus clenched his fists. I told you it was mine. But none of you listened. Agent Rivera looked between them, his expression unreadable. The bigger issue now is who inside that bank authorized the fraud. We have reason to believe it's not just one teller. It could be a network. And Mr. Green's case may be the key to breaking it open. Marcus stared in disbelief. So I'm not just a suspect, I'm a witness? Rivera gave a tight smile. More than that. Your evidence that their profiling backfired. They thought you'd be an easy target, someone no one would question. But your attorney and your persistence changed that. Daniel leaned toward Marcus. This could clear your name completely, but it also means stepping into a dangerous fight. Marcus exhaled slowly. He had walked into the bank just to deposit his father's legacy. Now, it seemed, he was standing at the center of a storm that reached far beyond his family. Marcus sat across from Agent Rivera, his wrists finally freed from the cuffs, but the sting of humiliation still burned. So, what happens now? Do I just walk out of here like nothing happened? Rivera shook his head. It's not that simple. You've become part of an active federal investigation. That makes you both an asset and a target. Daniel frowned. Target? For what exactly? Rivera leaned forward. The laundering ring inside that bank isn't just about moving dirty money. It's tied to organized crime. Whoever orchestrated this didn't want attention. Mr. Green's deposit put a spotlight right where they didn't want it. Marcus rubbed his temples. So you're saying they might come after me? Rivera's silence was answer enough. Daniel slammed his briefcase shut. Then the FBI needs to guarantee his safety. My client will not be thrown to the wolves just because the bank couldn't keep its house clean. The captain scoffed. Sounds like you're enjoying the drama. To me, he's still a guy with a suspicious check. Rivera shot him a sharp look. And that attitude is why your department will be under review. You didn't just mishandle this. You almost destroyed a man's life. Marcus's voice cracked with controlled fury. Almost? You dragged me out in front of strangers like I was trash. My son will see those videos online. My wife cried thinking I was gone. You think I'll ever forget that? The captain had no response. Rivera straightened. Mr. Green, I'll be blunt. If you cooperate, you could help bring down the entire network. But you'll have to decide if you're willing to take that risk. Marcus's eyes hardened. For years he'd been quiet, swallowing injustice. But this time, something inside him was ready to fight back. The night was long, and Marcus barely touched the stale sandwich they'd given him. Daniel sat beside him in the dim interrogation room, going over the options again and again. You don't owe them anything, Daniel said firmly. The FBI should do their own job. You've already been humiliated enough. Marcus's gaze was distant. But if I walk away, that bank keeps doing this to others. What if the next man doesn't have a lawyer? What if the next man doesn't come home to his family? Daniel sighed. Marcus, listen to me. These people, organized crime, corrupt bankers, they don't play fair. They'll try to intimidate you, maybe worse. I can protect you in court, but out there... He trailed off. At that moment, Agent Rivera entered. Mr. Green, we've traced the flagged transaction. The teller who reported your check works under a manager we've been monitoring. We believe he's laundering money for a criminal syndicate. We need someone on the inside, someone they won't suspect is working with us. Marcus chuckled bitterly. You mean the man they just arrested and humiliated? The perfect scapegoat. Rivera didn't deny it. It's risky. But your cooperation could expose every player in this scheme. If you help us, we'll ensure your safety and clear your name publicly. Marcus turned to Daniel. His lawyer's eyes were sharp, protective, but uncertain. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice calm but firm. I didn't choose this fight. It found me. But I'm not going to let my father's legacy be used as a cover for criminals. I'll do it. I'll help. Daniel closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. Rivera gave a slight nod. The decision was made. And from that moment, Marcus Green wasn't just an innocent man. He was about to become the key to justice. 2 days later, Marcus found himself in a hotel conference room, sitting across from Agent Rivera and a small FBI team. A whiteboard behind them displayed names, account numbers, and a web of connections tied to the laundering ring. Rivera laid out the plan. The bank manager, Charles Denton, is our primary target. He's been moving cartel money through customer accounts, disguising deposits as legitimate transactions. We believe Denton flagged your check deliberately to make it look suspicious and hide his own activities. Marcus frowned. So he used me as a distraction? Exactly, Rivera confirmed. And now we need you to go back to that bank. Act as if you're angry but desperate to clear your name. Denton may try to cut a deal with you or threaten you. Either way, we'll be listening. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I don't like this. You're putting my client in the lion's den. Rivera's tone was firm. We'll wire him, monitor every second, and have agents nearby. But Denton won't talk to us. He'll talk to someone he thinks he can manipulate. Marcus leaned back, heart pounding. Just a week ago, his biggest concern was paying off his son's school fees. Now he was about to walk into a trap, wearing a wire for the FBI. What if he knows? Marcus asked quietly. What if he suspects I'm working with you? Rivera didn't hesitate. Then we'll move in before he makes a move. But make no mistake, Marcus, this is dangerous. Denton won't go down without a fight. Marcus tightened his fists under the table. Fear clawed at him, but another feeling was stronger, determination. For once, he wasn't going to be the victim of the system. He was going to help bring it down. Marcus walked up the marble steps of the bank with his heart hammering against his ribs. Hidden under his shirt was the wire the FBI had carefully fitted, and in his ear, a barely audible buzz confirmed the line was open. Agent Rivera's voice whispered faintly, We've got you, Marcus. Stay calm. We're watching. Inside, the familiar teller froze when she saw him. Fear flickered across her face, then vanished behind forced professionalism. Mr. Green, she said stiffly, Mr. Denton would like to see you in his office. Marcus forced a smirk. I was hoping he would. Denton's office was lavish. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, and a wall of certificates meant to project respectability. But the man behind the desk wore an oily smile that made Marcus's skin crawl. Mr. Green, Denton greeted smoothly. Quite the spectacle last week. A shame, really. But you should know, things like that happen when large sums move unexpectedly. Marcus leaned forward. Unexpected? That was my father's money. You ruined my name in front of the whole city. Denton steepled his fingers. Names can be repaired, for a price. You want this to go away? Cooperate with us. We can make sure your accounts are never questioned again. Marcus's jaw tightened. And if I don't? Denton's smile vanished. Then your life gets very complicated. Through the wire, Rivera's voice was tense. We've got enough, Marcus. Keep him talking just a little longer. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing himself to hold Denton's gaze. So what exactly are you offering me? Denton leaned closer, lowering his voice. Protection, money, a chance to be on the right side of power. But betray us. He tapped the desk sharply. And you won't live to regret it. Marcus kept his face calm, though his insides twisted. Denton's words carried more than menace. They carried certainty. This wasn't a man bluffing. You think I'm scared of you? Marcus asked evenly, though sweat beaded his neck. Denton chuckled, cold and deliberate. You should be. Men like you, ordinary, forgettable, you disappear every day and no one blinks. But men like me... He spread his arms. We own the system. Police, judges, even politicians owe us favors. That's why you were dragged out of here in handcuffs. That was me, pulling a string. Marcus's chest tightened. Denton had orchestrated his humiliation. Through the wire, Rivera's voice was steady. We've got him admitting influence. Stay with it, Marcus. Marcus leaned in, his voice low. So all this time, the bank wasn't protecting people's money. It was protecting yours. Denton's smile returned. Now you understand. Which is why I'm offering you a chance. Work with me, help us move a few more checks like yours, and you'll never have to worry about bills again. Or... His eyes narrowed. You can walk away and pray we forget you exist. Marcus forced a laugh. You sound like you're giving me a choice. But really, you're giving me a death sentence if I say no. Denton didn't deny it. Instead, he slid a small slip of paper across the desk. Think it over. Call this number when you're ready to be useful. Rivera's urgent whisper crackled in Marcus's ear. Don't take it. Stall. We need more. Marcus picked up the slip, his hand trembling just slightly. I'll think about it. Denton leaned back, satisfied. Good. I knew you were smarter than you looked. Marcus forced a nod, but inside he was boiling. Denton thought he'd won. But Marcus was done playing the victim. Back at the FBI safe house, Marcus dropped the slip of paper onto the table. Rivera snatched it up immediately, handing it to a tech agent who began tracing the number. That conversation was gold, Rivera said. We have proof of Denton's corruption, his links to organized crime, even his manipulation of the police. But we're not done yet. Marcus rubbed his temples. Not done? He threatened me to my face. How much more do you need? Daniel, arms crossed, glared at Rivera. You've already put my client in danger once. If this escalates, he could end up dead before you ever get your perfect case. Rivera met his stare. We're close to exposing the entire network. If we move too soon, Denton walks with a slap on the wrist. We need the money trail, the offshore accounts, the handlers. That's the only way to dismantle it all. Marcus sat quietly, then spoke, his voice heavy. So you want me to call him? Pretend I'm willing to play along? Rivera hesitated before nodding. Yes, just one more meeting. We'll be watching every second. This time we'll be ready to close the net. Daniel leaned toward Marcus. Don't do it. They've used you enough. Let the FBI find another way. But Marcus's mind was already made up. He thought of Jamal, his son, growing up in a world where men like Denton abused power without consequences. He thought of his father, who had worked his hands raw to earn honest money, only for it to be dirtied by crooks in suits. I'll do it, Marcus said firmly. But when this is over, I want the truth out there. My name, my dignity, they're taking that back too. Rivera gave a rare approving nod. Then let's set the trap. The following evening, Marcus walked into a dimly lit restaurant on the edge of town. The FBI had disguised him in a dark jacket and fitted him with a smaller wire, barely noticeable. Rivera's voice whispered in his ear, We're in position. Stay calm. He won't suspect a thing. Charles Denton sat in a corner booth, sipping expensive whiskey. His smug grin widened as Marcus approached. Mr. Green, I knew you'd come around. Marcus slid into the booth, forcing an uneasy smile. You made it clear I didn't have many choices. Denton chuckled. Good man. That's the first step, understanding the rules. You'll move money for us. Small at first, then bigger. Do it clean, and you'll earn more in a month than you did in a year at your job. Marcus clenched his fists under the table. And what if I make a mistake? Denton's eyes hardened. Then you won't get a chance to make another, but keep your head down and you'll live very comfortably. He slid a thick envelope across the table. Marcus glanced at it, stacks of cash. His stomach turned. Rivera's voice hissed in his ear, "Take it. That's the evidence." Marcus reached out slowly, his hand brushing the envelope. But before he could pull it closer, Denton leaned in, lowering his voice. "One last thing. I know you talked to the police. If I find out you're talking to anyone else, FBI, lawyers, anyone, you and your family disappear. Understand?" Marcus forced himself to nod, though rage burned in his chest. "Understood," Rivera whispered urgently. "We've got enough. Hold steady. We're closing in." Marcus leaned back, staring at Denton, the envelope heavy in his hands. The trap was set, and the walls around Denton were closing fast. Outside the restaurant, black SUVs lined the street, their engines quiet, their windows tinted. FBI agents crouched behind car doors, waiting for Rivera's signal. Inside, Marcus's pulse thudded in his ears. He forced himself to sit casually, even as sweat slicked his palms. Denton poured another drink, clearly convinced he had Marcus under control. "You're smarter than I thought," Denton said smoothly. "Most men in your position panic. But you? You see opportunity. I like that." Marcus gave a thin smile. "I'm just trying to protect my family." Denton nodded approvingly. "And you will, if you stay loyal." At that moment, Rivera's voice crackled in Marcus's ear. "We've got the wire, the cash exchange, the threats, all recorded. Stand by. We move on my mark." Marcus's chest tightened. Any wrong move could cost him everything. Denton leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Here's your first assignment. Tomorrow, you'll deposit 50 grand into a new account. It won't be in your name, but don't ask questions. Do it right, and you'll earn 10%. Do it wrong." He tapped the table ominously. "Well, you won't," Rivera whispered urgently. "That's it. We have enough. Marcus, signal us." Marcus swallowed hard, then scratched his chin, the prearranged sign. Within seconds, the restaurant doors slammed open. "FBI! Nobody move!" Agents swarmed the room. Diners screamed, diving under tables. Denton shot to his feet, his face twisting in fury. "You set me up!" he snarled at Marcus. Marcus stood, his voice steady for the first time that night. "No, Denton. You set yourself up." Agents cuffed Denton, shoving him against the table as Rivera stepped in, flashing his badge. "Charles Denton, you're under arrest for money laundering, conspiracy, and racketeering." The room erupted with chaos, but for Marcus, it was the sound of justice finally beginning. The next morning, Marcus sat outside the courthouse, sunlight warming his face. For the first time in days, he breathed without the weight of fear pressing down on his chest. Denton was behind bars, and the news spread like wildfire. Headlines read, "Bank manager arrested in FBI sting. Money laundering ring exposed." Daniel walked up, carrying a newspaper. "You made the front page," he said with a faint smile, "not as a suspect. As the man who helped bring them down." Marcus took the paper, staring at his own photo beneath the bold headline. His mugshot had been replaced with an image of him walking free, head held high. For once, the world saw him not as a criminal, but as a man who fought back. Rivera joined them. His usual stoic expression softened. "I owe you, Marcus. Without your courage, Denton would still be running his empire. The FBI will make sure the truth is public and your record is cleared." Marcus exhaled. "Good. Because my son doesn't need to grow up thinking his father was a criminal." Daniel put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Your son will grow up knowing his father stood against corruption and won." Marcus gazed across the street, where Lena and Jamal waited. His wife's smile trembled with relief, and his boy waved with both hands, shouting, "Daddy!" He walked toward them, every step lighter. Lena wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "You're home. That's all that matters." But Marcus knew it meant more. His father's legacy hadn't been tainted. It had been the weapon that uncovered a rotten system. For years, the world had tried to silence him, humiliate him, and doubt him. But in the end, his voice had been heard. Justice wasn't given, it was claimed, and Marcus Green had claimed it.